If you ever saw your elementary school teacher roll in that television, there's a very good chance a viewing of Schoolhouse Rock was in your future. I don't know if modern schools still include it in curriculums, but Schoolhouse Rock was the king of edutainment for a hot period of time. Thought up by ad executive David McHale in the early 1970s after learning that his son was struggling with his times tables, yet knew many Rolling Stones songs by heart, Schoolhouse Rock taught multiple school subjects through catchy songs from various genres of music. Starting in 1973, Schoolhouse Rock taught the times tables with multiplication rock, parts of speech with grammar rock, American history just in time for the bicentennial with America Rock, and scientific principles with science rock. Barring a few problematic, in hindsight, bits here and there, these 4 seasons would stand the test of time and are still perfectly applicable to today's youth. Then the 80s happened. The early 80s saw the rise of one of the most important pieces of technology, the home computer. While some personal computers had been released prior, like the Apple II and the Tandy TRS-80, the 80s was when these computers really took off. On August 12, 1981, IBM released the IBM Personal Computer. It quickly became a hot commodity, and sales quickly surpassed IBM's expectations, with over 750,000 units being sold by the end of 1983. It was so popular, Time magazine bent the rules and labeled the PC as the person, or rather, in this case, machine of the year in 1982. So what exactly does this have to do with Schoolhouse Rock? Well, I don't have any insight into the behind the scenes around this time, but I do know one thing. With a brand new piece of technology beginning to enter households, not many people are going to know exactly how to work it. The average Joe just can't start using this newfangled contraption without looking at instruction manuals. For all these people know, computers used to be these giant monoliths that required their own separate rooms full of fans to keep them from overheating. If only there was a way to learn the ins and outs of a computer in a fun and entertaining way. That's where Schoolhouse Rock enters the picture. 1982 saw the release of Schoolhouse Rock's 5th season, Computer Rock, which was aimed to teach kids everything they needed to know about this new device sitting in their family den.
To have some fun or pass a quiz, just follow this computer whiz. Scooter Computer and Mr. Chips, they got the answers at their fingertips.
In order to spice things up a bit, the creators went in a slightly different direction in how they presented each subject. Rather than one-off characters and scenarios, Computer Rock was hosted, quote-unquote, by 2 recurring characters. Scooter Computer, your average preteen with a very questionable last name, and Mr. Chips, an anthropomorphized computer who was there to teach Scooter about how he works and what he can do. This new tone is set with the first episode, simply called Introduction. Rather than teaching a subject, we are simply, as the title suggests, being introduced to our hosts for this season and given a general idea of what this season will entail.
Be sure to have the answer if the programmer was right. He searches all his data through and feeds back names of for that too. I knew I could depend on you. Hey, Chips, you're out of sight.
It was nothing.
Hardware teaches about computer hardware in a strangely dark and depressing manner, with Mr. Chips telling Scooter that despite seeming smart with all he's able to do, he's only as smart as his hardware will allow him, culminating in this rather brutal final few bars.
I'm nothing but diodes, capacitors, and resistors, interconnections, and transistors jammed together like canned sardines, thousands of teeny tiny machines printed on microscopic strips called chips.
Software is much more upbeat, talking about things like bits, bytes, basic, and other forms of software. I can't really say anything else about this. Good song.
But ABCs and 1, 2, 3s isn't talking. Hey, let's face it, that's why one language that we use is called Computer Basic.
Computer Basic?
Beginner's all-purpose symbolic instruction code.
Number Cruncher feels the most like a Schoolhouse Rock song, discussing how computers can be used to crunch numbers into stats. In this case, baseball statistics.
I can mix numbers up and combine them. I can take them apart and align them. I can shake numbers up. I can break numbers up. I can turn them into something you can use.
The next song is... Oh, crap, was that it?
Darn, that's the end.
With only 4 individual songs, Computer Rock stands as the shortest Schoolhouse Rock season and the shortest-lived season. Introduction and Hardware both debuted on ABC in 1982, with Software coming out in 1983 and Number Cruncher in 1984. The following year, in 1985, the season in its entirety was removed from circulation, and it would never be seen again until 2002, when it was included as a bonus feature on the Schoolhouse Rock 30th Anniversary DVD. And even then, only 3 of the 4 were included. Somehow, Introduction slipped through ABC's fingers and only existed in audio format for many years. That all changed when Scooter's original voice actor, Daryl Stern, found it on an old VHS tape lying around and uploaded it to his YouTube channel. By the way, thanks for this annoying watermark, Stern. Really appreciate it. But that begs the question. How and why did Computer Rock flop this badly? Let's start with the songs themselves. While the recurring character idea sounded good on paper, it strayed a bit too far from the Schoolhouse Rock formula. Instead of seeing multiple characters singing and teaching about different aspects of a computer, you're stuck with these 2 whether you like it or not. Another notable downside is the lack of familiar Schoolhouse Rock singers. Bob Dorough, Jack Sheldon, Lynn Ahrens, Lawson Deary, and even Ezra Mohawk are no-shows here. Stern is fine as a child singer, and Mr. Chips was performed by Bob Caliban, whose only other credited performance for Schoolhouse Rock was Science Rock's song about weather, The Greatest Show on Earth, which was prematurely taken out of circulation because that title was trademarked by Ringling Brothers, and boy would it suck if they sued.
Introducing the greatest show on earth, the weather!
And that's not really a strike against Caliban himself. He's also fine, but to carry the entire season without any assistance from one of the more recognizable players, this is just a questionable decision all around. However, that's just window dressing for the real reason why Computer Rock flopped. No, Computer Rock failed because it became outdated and obsolete almost instantly. What made Schoolhouse Rock so special was how its subjects were, for the most part, timeless. Multiplication and grammar haven't changed, American history is still the same as it was back in the 70s, give or take, and science, while it's plastered some asterisks over some songs over the years, it still remains relevant today. Okay, maybe equating the nervous system to a telegraph line was not the best analogy for the future? But computers, while that terminology still exists and BASIC is still in use today, everything Computer Rock teaches has become so common and universally well known that you don't exactly need a catchy song to remember it. Not to mention, Mr. Chips' look was woefully outdated by the time Number Cruncher aired. By 1984, the Apple Macintosh was released, which revolutionized the computer world with both the inclusion of a mouse and a graphical user interface, blowing Mr. Chips' text-only screen right out of the water. By the time Computer Rock was taken off the air in 1985, the Commodore Amiga and Atari ST hit the scene, showing that GUIs were here to stay. Despite being outdated and borderline worthless today, I can still find a few things to like about this season. Despite not performing the songs, Lynn Ahrens, Tom Yohei, Bob Dorough, and Dave Frischberg all contributed to lyrics and compositions. They're still Schoolhouse Rock songs after all, and they're still catchier than they have any right to be. They just tend to get swallowed up by the more well-known songs from the series. But thankfully, Computer Rock was included with the rest of Schoolhouse Rock on Disney+. All 3 of them. Hey Stern, no one likes an incomplete set, just saying. At the end of the day, Computer Rock was a flash-in-the-pan season that could only work in a very specific time frame. Once that time frame passed, it became outdated and has only gotten more out of date as time passes. But at the same time, it paints a unique picture of a time when computers weren't things we take for granted and were only just getting popular among the general public. If anything, Computer Rock is that one guy at the start of every Pokemon game that spouts about how technology is incredible. It's Strongbad's knowledge of computers summed up in 4 parts. It's a time capsule that says, you really had to be there to really appreciate it. And that's why Computer Rock is the Schoolhouse Rock season no one remembers. But seriously, Stern, give Introduction over to Disney. It's the only one they're missing. What do you mean they don't have Earth Rock?